Hello class, welcome to the Intro to Philosophy videos for Southern New Hampshire University. This is the video that will introduce Module 3 and provide a wrap-up of the content in Module 2. Before we get started though, I want to provide for you a little business update for what's coming up due this week. You've done a good job so far. Pretty much, figuring out exactly what's required of you on the discussion boards. Everyone's doing a really good job on those, so keep that up. In Module 2, you had an essay that was submitted this week. I'll be taking a look at those and giving you feedback. Most likely it will be audio feedback, so look for the little play button when you're reviewing your grade mark results in Turnitin. That's an easier kind of, a little bit more personal and a little bit more accurate way to give feedback, I think, rather than written feedback on the paper, because it allows me to be a little bit more candid with you, and it allows you to kind of, get a feel for my tone and my meaning better than written comments would allow for. So I'll be doing audio comments on your papers, and right now I'm just taking a look at the course content that we have going on for Module 3, and what I want to talk about most is your the first piece of your final project prospectus. So I'm going to bring up the window here, and as I look at our discussion board, you have the regular 3.1 discussion coming up this week, and you also have 3.2, the final project workshop discussion board. Okay, so what that is a place where you're going to post a topic that you want to work on for your final paper. So at this point, there's a topic list that I've already made, that is available to you. Actually, there's a question in the course Q&A about what those what those paper topics are and where to find them. So look there for information on the final project. But I'm also open to other topics. If there's a philosophical subject that really interests you, I'm very open to considering it and talking it over with you. So after your after your initial discussion board post on belief and knowledge, go to 3-2 final project workshop forum questions and topic posting, and create a thread in which you post your topic and give a couple of paragraphs on it and a possible source. And my feedback and other students' feedback on your topic will help you create the final project prospectus, which you will submit during Module 5. If you look, it's not available yet, but in Module 5, you will answer the questions that are in the final project prospectus guidelines and rubric. The questions that are in there will need to be answered in your prospectus, and you'll submit that in Module 5. So that's kind of where we're headed, and of course after that, in Module 7, you will submit the final paper. And of course, I'll give you feedback on your Module 5 prospectus. So that's it for the business items for this week. You've got you've got two things that are due: the regular discussion board and the prospectus discussion board. Should be pretty easy. So let's talk about knowledge for a little bit. In Module 2, we tackled kind of the mother of all philosophical problems, which is like the mind-body problem and the problem of perception, and how do we know that it matches up with reality. It's an epistemological problem, it's a metaphysical problem, and it's really not easy. And given that reality, I think you guys did a really good job on the discussion board. Of course, I played my usual devil's advocate position, and I was trying to work you guys over a little bit on some of your responses. But I think ultimately, most people got the gist. In fact, all of you, I think, got the gist of what's going on here. That there are different modes of knowledge that we have about the world, and some of them are more certain than others. Mathematical truths are certain, completely certain, and truths about the nature of our physical experience may not be as certain. And philosophy kind of gets a bad rap sometimes about asking questions like, gee, this guy's got too much time on his hands. Why is he thinking about, why is he spending time wondering if, we could be in a dream, or wondering if, the Matrix is real, or we could be a brain in a vat? What's the value in these kinds of things? I think the important part that I want you guys to know about is just first that questions like this help us distinguish the fact that there are two kinds of knowledge. There's knowledge that is derived empirically, that is a little less certain, and there's knowledge that is derived rationally, that is more certain, that is true regardless of what our senses tell us, like 2 plus 2 equals 4. And these different modes of knowledge have their places. For example, rational truths don't tell you much, even though, they can't be false. They don't always, they're, as I posted in one discussion board, they're analytic truths that really don't tell you all that much in addition to what you already know. You know that 2 plus 2 is equivalent to 4, and you know that all bachelors are unmarried males. That's a great statement that can't be false, but unfortunately it doesn't tell you much. Something like the ball is green tells you something about the ball that you didn't know before. You could be wrong about it based on your perceptions, but and the nature of your physical experience, but at least you're getting some real knowledge that isn't already contained within the concept of what you're talking about, in the way that unmarried male is contained within the concept of, say, bachelor. So that's a little bit of the reason why we have these discussions, because I think Descartes was serious when he asked if this all was a dream. And we may not be so serious when we ask it, but I think the exercise of going through it is valuable in distinguishing the kinds of knowledge that are available to us and how we can use them. And, on that subject of whether or not we're dreaming, I think I gave throughout this whole module in the discussion board, I gave you guys a lot of crap about, how do you know that your body is actually there? How do you know you're not a brain in a vat? All this stuff. Well, I think there's a good philosophical argument for why we're not, and why we can, even though sensation technically happens in the mind and on a sort of mental TV screen, and we're trusting that those sensations match up to what is quote unquote out there. I think we have a good philosophical argument to maintain that those things do match up pretty well. And surprisingly, it actually comes from Descartes. And Descartes gets a bad rap too, because he is famous for the evil genius argument. Oh, what if I'm dreaming? Or what if there's an evil genius, deceiving me? What everyone forgets is that Descartes concluded that that's not possible. He concluded that he can trust, while his senses are fallible, the reality that he's being presented with is accurate because of the light of reason, and because he believes that God is all good and couldn't deceive him, and all these other things. So even though Descartes is known for his hyperbolic doubt and his skepticism, he actually did have a decent understanding of what he thought was real, and that it matched up to the world. But the argument uses Cartesian terms too. It goes something like this: the criteria that we ought to use for determining whether or not anything is true is clarity and distinctness. So the more clear and distinct to us a perception is, perhaps the more real it is. And we make this distinction between reality and dreams. So yeah, sure, I may be dreaming right now. But when I go to sleep tonight, within this dream, and I have yet another dream, think about the movie Inception, for example, I wake up from that dream and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was dreaming. And the reason that I conclude that I was dreaming is because the dream that I had is less clear and distinct than this reality is. So, this reality is much more clear when I touch this, this table, and I touch the computer. It's much more clear and distinct to me than it is when I touch things in my dreams. Even though while I'm in the dream, I feel that it's real, when I wake up, I can compare the two and I know what's more clear and more distinct. So if clarity and distinctness are the criteria we're going to use for judging the validity of our experience, simply ask, what is more clear and distinct to us? The idea that what we perceive is real and matches up to reality, or the possibility that something else might be the case that we're deceived about. We can entertain it, but we have no clarity and no distinctness about that thing. another kind of shortened way of giving this argument is, yeah, it's a possibility, but we have no reason to think that it might be the case. Unless we start seeing, glitches in our reality and start to question things, as Neo did in the movie The Matrix. Uh, our reality right now is as clear and as distinct as it gets, um, and based on the fact that arguments that this reality might be false rely on things that are less clear and distinct than our perceptions of this reality itself, we should simply default to this reality as being the ultimate truth. That's one way you can go about it, and there may be others as well. But before we take up too much time, let's kind of transition into what's going on in the next module. I'm going to bring up the discussion board question here, and let's see. So we're talking about now, we're getting into this whole question of belief and knowledge. And I'm not going to go through the whole discussion board question, but the last module that we did has to do with about knowing, right? And excuse me, let's silence this. So first we were about knowing. Now it's about belief and knowledge, and the distinction between belief and knowledge. So what exactly is that? And in order to have an occasion to talk about the distinction between belief and knowledge, we're going to talk about the possibility of the afterlife, which is fun. So we're going to talk about, whether or not there's proof of life after death, and if there isn't, does this mean that we should not believe in life after death? Or does lack of proof mean we're justified in believing whatever we want? Like that's what we've written in the discussion board here. But it applies to more questions than simply the question of the afterlife. Think about the question of whether or not God exists. Do we have proof that God exists? Some people say that we do. Logical arguments, philosophical arguments. Other people have arguments from the nature of morality or from the nature of intelligent design, or even from religious experience. Other people say, no, we don't have proof. The question is, in the absence of proof, does it still make sense to believe? Does belief have a place in philosophical contexts when there's no good reason to believe that, or if there are just a few good reasons but not a preponderance of evidence? As you go forward in this discussion, just do what you've been doing. You did a great job in the last module, but I want to enter 3 terms into your vocabulary. You already have the term proof, justified true belief, and so on and so forth. In the next part it says, in answer to these questions, consider whether it is rational to believe things you cannot prove. Whatever your own views, this question is really an exercise in critical thinking and goes to the issue of understanding what belief and knowledge mean. So be sure to clarify distinction between belief and knowledge in your initial forum post. I would like to add a couple of things to that. I want you to, at least, you don't have to define these things, but use them to kind of get your mind wrapped around the question of belief and knowledge. The difference between whether belief in something is rational, irrational, or non-rational. Like the belief in the afterlife, or the belief in God, or belief in the existence of the soul, or things that most people agree we can't prove. What's the difference between a rational belief? It's rational to believe that this is the case. It's irrational to believe that this is the case. Or it's simply non-rational to believe that this is the case. I believe that all 3 of those terms are different, and they have different meanings in a philosophical context. And I'd like to invite you to explore the difference between the rational, the irrational, and the non-rational, and see if that can inform your understanding in this discussion board at all. So that about wraps it up. We're moving full steam ahead into Module 3. So if anybody has any questions about any assignments or anything else, please give me a holler either in the Q&A forum on the discussion board, in email, or on the phone. I believe my number is posted on my instructor contact. So without further ado, have a good week and good luck in Module 3.